community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community Webinar, or 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization that is committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles as introduced to people throughout the world. And today we are so delighted to have Dr. Dicken Bettinger with us. Dicken has been around the principles for quite a while. He's a teacher, facilitator, speaker, all around good guy. And is there anything else particular you want to say about yourself? Because I was a neglectful host and I misplaced your bio.
I've been around the principles so long. I had hair when I first started learning this. So it's like, I think it was in 1987, I came across the principles. Sid Banks, all that good stuff.
All right, well, we are good to go.
Good to go. Thanks, Tom. Welcome, everybody. Boy, it's just so heartwarming to see so many friends, old and new. Thank you for coming. It's a topic near and dear to my life. I'm sort of revealing what I think is the very essence of everything I've learned in the past, I don't know, however long it's been. And I remember when I met Sid, I had been working as a psychologist for 10 years. And I was very interested, even that whole time, in well-being. And I would study carefully any psychologist or spiritual teacher that talked about well-being. Because before I became a psychologist, I taught high school. And I had a lot of what other teachers called troublemakers in my class. And I never saw them as troublemakers, and I certainly didn't see these kids who were struggling as having an incurable illness, some kind of mental illness. That never made sense to me. And I got my doctorate in an education department that trained psychologists. And the philosophy was, if anybody is struggling and having trouble, it's not their fault. It's not some kind of flaw about them. It's not an illness. It's just they haven't learned what they need to learn in order to have an easier time of things. So it really put the focus on insights and the fact that everybody is capable of learning and having insights. And then I could see people as being healthy people who got lost, got distracted, got caught up. And it was hopeful. But nobody had the depth and clarity that I studied. Nobody had the depth and clarity of Sid Banks and the simplicity. So I thought I'd share with you how I sort of blundered along at first, because it was so new to me and so different in a lot of ways from traditional psychology, even a health-based psychology. It was different. My son was 9 years old. My daughter was just turning 14 when I learned the principles. And like any kids, they would have their moments. And like any parent, I would have my moments. Frustration, impatience, upset, confusion, worry. And as I learned the principles, two things stuck out. And I was very, very interested in those days to hear from Sid what happened to you when you changed. And he would talk about two main insights, two insights he had that completely transformed his life from an insecure ninth grade educated welder to someone who was then talking to universities and large audiences, and people from all over the world were coming to find this guy. What happened? And I'm sure you've probably heard these stories, so I won't go into them in great detail, but he went with his wife to a couples retreat, and it was back in the 70s, and psychology was very excited about trying to help people cathartic their negative feelings. So there was a lot of yelling and pounding pillows and getting your anger out. And unfortunately, the divorce rate skyrocketed during that time. Be honest, tell the person what you don't like, get it out there, don't repress it, or you're going to die of an illness. And everybody was into cathartic feelings. So when people came to see me as a psychologist, I'd say, how are things going? What happened to you recently? Or what do you want to talk about that's been difficult? Oh, how did you feel about that? Oh, you felt upset. Oh, okay. Tell me about that. And then we go into how upset they were and just go deeper and deeper into people's upset. And so uh, we were told that if you can help people get in touch with all that pain on the inside and cathartic, you're really helping them. So innocently, we help people focus on their worst negative memories and talk about them and think about them and talk about them and think about them. And they'd get worse. And they say, well, you have to get worse before you get better. You got to go through the pain. Coming to therapy was like going to a dentist. It was no fun, but you assumed it was going to be helpful in the end. So we drill into people's woundedness. And then I would try and teach people self-hypnosis or dream work or meditation as a way of trying to help them touch something beyond their conditioning. So I hear Sid's first story as he's at this couples workshop. They're cathartic. Sid is very quiet and shy, and boy, he's going, oh, I had no idea this was going to be how they tried to help you have a healthier relationship. Be honest with your spouse about everything you don't like about them didn't seem to him to make sense. He's telling his wife, we made a horrible mistake. We've spent all this money and I think we should leave. So someone else at the workshop who happened to be a psychologist who was taking this program from a very famous New York City psychologist. And they went for a walk during a break, and the psychologist said to Sid, Sid, you don't seem to be getting much out of this workshop. And he says, I'm not, I'm too insecure. It's too painful to dredge up all that painful past and to be so public about it. I'm sort of a private person. And the guy thought about it and he came back to Sid later and said, Sid, I've been thinking about what you said about you being so insecure. And I think that's just the silliest thing I've ever heard. It's just nonsense. You're not insecure, Sid. You just think you are. Now, this is what I was interested. What the heck did Sid hear at that moment that was life transforming? That where he said it felt like an explosion went off inside of me. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. I was so wide awake, and I started understanding everything about unhappiness and insecurity, that it's just a temporary thought created illusion. It's not who we are. It's just thought. It's like a dream. You wake up from a bad dream and you go, thank God it was just a dream. It wasn't really true. And he woke up from the dream of all of his unhappy, insecure thinking. I was very interested in that. Do I? I realized pretty quickly that everybody is thinking all the time and everybody has high moods and low moods. But Sid realized, well, when people are in low moods, they're really prone to grab onto that thinking and think it's true. And that's the only reason why people suffer. So I want you to consider this as I did and reflect on it and see if this makes sense. There's only one source of psychological suffering for any human being. I don't care who they are. I don't care if they are a business executive suffering from stress. I don't care if they're a child who's been abused. I don't care if it's a person who's been in prison for long periods of time. I don't care if it's a person who's been in a mental institution for a long time. I don't care what psychiatric diagnosis people had. Sid was making the preposterous statement, at least it seemed preposterous at the time, that there's only one source of human psychological suffering, and that's holding on to negative thought. Now, we hold it in a lot of different ways. You can hold it by keeping your attention on it. That's one way of holding. Another way is focusing on it and thinking about it. That's another way of holding. Another way is trying to analyze why you think and feel that way. That's another way of holding. And the long and the short of it, you just start thinking that your low mood, insecure, negative, judgmental thoughts are true. So we all have a voice in our head, and when we get upset or insecure, that voice is talking to us constantly. I worked with a woman this morning who's coming to the realization as she learns that holding negative thought is really the only way any of us can suffer ever psychologically. She started seeing that she's always thought her insecure thoughts were true. And she would talk to herself with, oh, I can't change. Oh, I'm no good. Oh, I'm not as good as other people. Oh, this is going to be too hard. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, I should be able to do this. On and on and on and on and on. And I said, listen, from what you've told me, you love your little nieces. She says, I do. I love them. I said, do you ever talk to them that way? You're no good. You can't do this. You should be able to feel different. Don't feel the way you feel. Do you ever talk to them like that? She said, oh my God, no, I would never talk to them. I said, well, why are you listening to yourself talk that way all the time? I used to listen to all my insecure thinking. I used to think it was true. At a certain point, if you start thinking that your insecure thoughts are true, you start thinking that becomes your identity. That's who I am. I am an insecure person. I am my psychiatric diagnosis. I am a depressed person. That's who I am. It becomes our identity. That's why it's really hard for some people to feel better is they not only think it's true, they think it's who they are. That's just how I am. That's me. That's my personality. So I'm considering this for myself. And I was a big time worrier, worrying about things. My mother was a big worrier. My dad was more likely to think about something that he didn't like and keep thinking about it, and it would bum him out and he'd get really down. So I learned how to do those things really well. Innocently, it's what in psychology we call our conditioned thinking. You're not born with it, but you learn it. Doesn't it make sense if you grow up in a family where people are angry, you get good at it too? Or if you grow up in people that worry, you get good at worrying, and you just becomes your conditioned thinking, learned thinking. I just spent a week taking care of my youngest grandkids, ages just turning 5, a little girl, and the little boy is 7.5. They're not all that interested in their low mood thinking yet, but there's the 7-year-old starting to get more interested in it. They're too interested in playing than focusing on their low mood thinking. So when they get upset, they don't do what most adults do when they have a low mood. Most adults, when they feel tension, stress, or upset, do more thinking. We somehow think it's true, so we got to think our way out of it, figure out what to do, how to deal with it, but we accept it as true. Little kids don't do that. They have a low mood, they get upset, and then boy, I watch my 2 little grandkids for a week, and they would rarely stay in a low mood for more than 5 minutes. They'd be off playing and they'd be in the present moment. And when you're in the present moment, that means you're not holding on to any of your thoughts. If you start getting caught up in your thinking, you'll leave the present moment and you won't be able to play and enjoy the moment. So two main lessons. Sid had two main insights that, in my mind, are two wonderful lessons that I want everybody to learn. So the first one I've been talking about is that the only way we can suffer, it's normal to have low moods. It's normal to feel these feelings. There's nothing wrong with feeling any of those feelings. You're not trying to get rid of them. That's an impossibility. But when we realize that the only way you can extend a low mood is by thinking into it, you do less and less of that kind of low mood thinking. And you start to catch on to the trick. There's only one trick, trying to make you think that thinking has validity and is true and is worth paying attention to. One time I had an insight, what would happen if all of my low mood thinking switched into Chinese? I laughed for 3 days. I wouldn't understand a word of my low mood thinking. I wouldn't be at all inclined to get involved in it or think it's true or pay attention to it or identify with it. It'd just be background talking. I said, wouldn't it be great if we had a switch in our head? We could change the language of our thinking anytime we wanted to. I couldn't stop laughing about, I gotta flip the switch now. Oh my God, my low mood thinking is going crazy here. Low mood thinking is normal as the psychological waste. What do you do with waste? What do you do with garbage? What do you do with bodily waste? You flush it, you throw it away, you get rid of it. You don't entertain it, you don't eat it, you don't play with it, you don't throw it around at your friends. Come on, let it go for God's sake. That's, see, all spiritual teaching, that the first step of learning about the spiritual dimension is letting go of thought. That's what is at the heart of prayer. It's at the heart of meditation. Sid Banks would say, you cannot understand a single thing I'm saying if you're in your conceptual mind. You have to go beyond all concepts. Let it all go. Good, good and bad. Let it all go and see what's still here. See what you discover. It's one of my favorite things all during the day. There's nothing more enjoyable for me than letting go of everything I think I know, everything I'm thinking, everything, all, the whole story, all the story in my head, just for a moment. Sid would beg us, just for a moment, please. See what it's like. Find out. Don't take my word for it. He says, everybody gets excited when I tell them, look within, go beyond your thinking to a quiet that's always there. And in that quiet, there's a nice feeling. And in that feeling is all the guidance you'll need to live a good life. He says, that's all I've ever been sharing with people all these years. Everybody gets excited, nobody does it. Now, when I work with clients and I say, there's only two things I can teach you, there's only two things I want you to learn, really, bottom line. If you learn that all of the only way you can feel tension, stress, or upset is by holding on to thought. Feeling those feelings is not a problem. Stress is not a problem. Upset, anger, hurt, sorrow is not a problem. Feeding it with more thinking so that it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and holding on to it so your downtimes become extended is a problem. My hand can be like this, open, relaxed, doesn't require any effort. There's no effort in being open. I'm meant to do this. I can do this. No human being is meant to stay clenched. If you keep doing this, after it takes very little time, it starts to hurt. This is the physical correlate to getting caught up in thinking. It starts to hurt. When you realize I'm the one holding, you have a choice now. Keep holding or let go. So when I work with clients and they start seeing, thank God I feel stressed and upset, it invites me back to the present moment. That's all. There's no truth in it. It's not something I need to pay attention to. It's not a good advisor. It's waste. What do you do with waste? You flush it. It's not a problem if you understand the nature of it. It's just a natural cycle. You inhale, you exhale. Natural cycle. No one can get away with saying, I'm not going to do exhale anymore. I'm just going to inhale. Try it. You see, low moods are not the problem. Thinking they're true, holding them, continuing to think about them creates chronic stress rather than being what in psychology we call being resilient. What's resilience? Getting over something quickly. That's a hallmark of well being. How quickly do you get over your upsets? How seriously do you take them when you have your low moods? How much do you buy into that voice and what it's saying is truth? So Sid comes along and says truth can only be found in a beautiful feeling. So you have a choice. What do you want to listen to? Sid had a second realization that I wish on everybody, that I would like to demystify. He had what many people would call an enlightenment experience. It's really more than an experience, it's a realization of our true nature. Now, Sid thought when it happened to him, and he says, I went outside of my conceptual mind completely. So I have no concept of myself, no concept of me, other, separate, different. There's just being. We're human beings. He got a direct experience of spirit or being. And he says it's just an infinite field of energy dancing around. And we're all one with that field. We can't be separate from it. We're already whole and complete. And the experience of that ultimately is pure love, the experience of being part of or connected to life. It's an unconditional love. So his first insight was about fear is a temporary thought created illusion created by the holding that we innocently do. And his second insight was when you go beyond your thinking just for a moment. So Sid would say, if you can take one little precious step beyond your thought system, you'll discover truth. You'll discover an experience of vastness, of you will feel closer to life and to people. I didn't want to take Sid's word for it. So for 2 years, when I didn't feel close to my wife, I said, oh, I must be holding thought. Has nothing to do with her, has nothing to do with our relationship. This is not grounds for doing what I used to do, is run up to her and say, oh my God, we got to talk. And then we'd have these low mood conversations about our relationship. We don't do that anymore. It doesn't mean we can't tell each other I'm in a really low mood or it's really evident. Really evident. It's just a natural part of that cycle. When you're healthy, you ride through a low mood without buying into your thinking, and it's no big deal. You don't act on it. You don't think there's truth to it. You're not influenced or persuaded. You don't get the influenza, get sick. So Sid thought every single one of us, no exception, can get little glimpses of being enlightenment is as we fall out of our thinking mind into the quiet that's always there underneath that. You get a little glimpse of enlightenment. Why is that? Because without doing anything, when you touch that space or rest in that space, you'll start to feel better. You'll feel more relaxed, more peaceful, more calm. So Sid would often say, look for a quiet mind. So you already have it. It's always there, even under a very noisy, caught up mind. Just below that is quiet. Go beyond all concepts. Go beyond your intellect just for a moment. Let it go. How do we do that, Sid? It seems so hard. He said, well, every time you become present, you step beyond your intellect. Is it hard being present? I say to my clients, do you drive a car? Do you, when you get in the car, going, it's too hard to get present, I'll never be able to drive? You just get present and drive. The only way we can experience well-being is in the present moment. No one can think their way to well-being, and yet most of us do that when we're in low moods. We do more thinking. And Sid would say, if you really see that it's holding thought is creating your suffering, it's natural to let go of what you're holding. It's not a technique. If I put something really hot in your hand and you realize my hand is burning, if I keep this in my hand, you'll drop it. So Sid says, if you really see thought, it'll bring you back to the now. Why would I keep thinking about this if it makes me miserable? It's creating misery, literally. Why would I hold on to this tension, this stress, this upset? I'm a thought away from the now at all times. You could say somebody who's having a nightmare is a thought away from waking up at all times. And as soon as they wake up, they're free. So sometimes they talk about the spiritual journey as waking up. If you learn about thought, you can discover what it is to wake up out of insecure, judgmental, negative, distorted, contaminated thinking. It's not bad. It's not wrong. There's no should here. It's natural. It's part of life, but flush it. Flush it right away. Just a natural cycle. It's the way we psychologically we eliminate waste. Okay. I keep coming back to the simplicity. There's two things. Holding thought creates our extended low moods, and realizing that, falling open into a quiet mind allows us to fill up with feelings of being closer. So it's as simple as this. When I go for walks with my friends in the woods or with clients, I'm surrounded by beautiful woods. If you're thinking, you don't experience beauty. You don't even see the woods. When people fall out of their thinking going for a walk in the woods, they always begin to go, oh my God. Oh, it's so beautiful. Look at this. Look at the light coming down through the trees here. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps. Oh my gosh. Look at that bird. Oh, isn't that beautiful? What kind of bird is that? Oh, look at all the little flowers there. Oh, look at the way that fern is. Let me get a picture of that. That's what we're like when we're little kids before we're holding. We live in awe and wonder. I just saw a wonderful YouTube by a 94-year-old woman. Her lesson in life, her message to everybody is slow down and live in awe and wonder again. She said, I didn't do that even in my childhood. I had a very miserable childhood, and now I'm learning how to be a child now. And they showed her walking around. Oh my gosh, she's just delighting in life. I would collect stories of people in impossibly horrible situations that have learned that it's not the situation that determines what we live in. It's our free will to either stay in our personal thinking or to go beyond it. And when people go beyond it, they discover a peace that passes understanding. They discover an uncaused joy, happiness. You know what happiness is? Really simple. When we fall out of our thinking, our senses come alive. And the feeling of that feels good. You become happy in your senses. Sid says your mind becomes uncontaminated. So two things. Sometimes Sid would say it this way: it's all thought. Everything, every bit of our experience is thought. If you realize that, you'll see that holding on to and continuing to think about something that is causing your tension, stress, or upset will allow you to release that thinking more and more. So my clients who do well start catching themselves thinking up all kinds of crazy stuff, and they go, oh, why would I keep thinking about this? Now the ego is going to want to analyze, well, what is it I'm holding on to? As if you have to know that before you let it go. If you have a bag of garbage, do you have to open it back up and examine everything in it before you put it in the trash? That's how, that innocently, that's how I often used to do psychotherapy with people. Bring in your bag of garbage and we'll open it in my office, examine. It was very, very innocent. It's good to see that a science can evolve and change and grow. Principles have helped psychology change and grow so that it includes the spiritual dimension of life. So sometimes Sid would say, it's all thought and listen for a feeling. That's all you need to know. Or you say every bit of your unhappiness is just thought that you think is true. It's an illusion. And when you go beyond your thinking, you'll discover heaven on earth. You'll discover beauty. You'll discover uncaused peace, happiness, love. I told you for 2 years, I'd not feel close to my wife. And instead of blaming her or the relationship, I'd go into another room and just let my mind alone, just relax. And I would just wait patiently until my thinking quieted down. I use the metaphor of a snow globe, just set it down. And I'd wait until I noticed that I was feeling a little more relaxed, a little bit better. And then I'd go back in and be with my wife. She looked different. I swear she changed. You know, when you're in love with somebody, they can be in the worst mood ever and you still think they're cute as can be. That's an unconditional love, right? You're not saying you have to be a certain way for me to feel closer to you. No, the great secret is when our mind becomes clear of all of our conditioned negative thinking, memory, when we're not holding on to it, even if it's still there blabbing, if you don't pay attention to it, you'll feel good for no reason. I did a workshop once called Feeling Good for No Good Reason. I told my daughter and my son, before you leave home, there's only two things I hope you start catching on to. If you start seeing that getting caught up in your thinking is the only thing that creates problems for us psychologically. And if you start seeing that when we're not holding, our nature is to feel good. And when you feel good, you'll have all the common sense you need to deal with whatever problem you have. My son, who at that time was struggling in school and had diagnosed ADD, he's now owner of 6 restaurants, 7 restaurants. Happy father. He comes home at 5 o'clock. He's not a crazy restaurant owner that's family is our priority. My daughter, sometimes I think she's my teacher. She's so resilient. She's she's one of the most resilient people I've ever met. And she's had challenges and difficulties and hard times, and boy, does she bounce back quickly. Unbelievable. Tons and tons of friends, and runs 9 miles a day, and in such amazing shape. She's just turned 50. I can't even believe I'm telling you I have a 50-year-old daughter who's a best friend and a love to be around. That's what I want for everybody. So I told my kids, before you leave, just 2 things. And so I had to live it and not preach it in order to have any credibility, especially with my teenage daughter. I had to live this. That was more important. My son never wanted me to talk about the principles, so I could only teach him by showing him that an adult can take responsibility for their state of mind, get over things quickly, and come back in relationship from a good feeling on a regular basis, so that he could see that possibility and so that he grew up knowing that that's possible in a relationship. So he has that kind of relationship with his wife and his kids. It's what I wanted, these 2 things. It's all I've ever wanted for any client I've ever worked with. Executives of companies just crippled by stress and strained relationships with their spouse and kids, and tons of money, but no understanding that allows them to have an easier time of things. So I tell them it's simple, just 2 things. We live in the world of thought, and we can step beyond our personal thinking into a deeper dimension of thought, deeper dimension of awareness, deeper dimension of wisdom. And it's ordinary and it's available to everybody, and you already have it. I give the same message when I spent a week talking with people in bomb shelters in the Ukraine. It becomes an incredibly valuable commodity to find peace of mind when you're in the midst of a horrific war, and to bring a good feeling to other people around you who are terrified and frightened. Same message when I talk with people in the Middle East caught up in that crisis. I'm not political. I'm not taking sides. I'm talking to human beings. Let me tell you how our minds work, and the one problem and the one cure. Fear is an illusion. Love is real. Love is always here. Come home, come back to that inner quiet. And you'll be aware of a feeling. You won't even be able to label it because you're not in your conceptual mind. So Sid often would just say, well, it's a nice feeling. It's a beautiful feeling. What can I say? Well, what is it? Well, you could call it peace, you could call it joy, you could call it love, but you got to be in your head to be doing that. My little grandkids aren't labeling their good feelings. They're just getting present and being in the feeling and sharing it with each other. And they laugh and giggle and play. And We took them to water parks and to playgrounds and just watched them being lighthearted, our true nature, playful, present, kind, helpful. So there it is, folks. The two most important things I think any human being can learn is that our bodies only contract or they expand. And when they contract, it's no fun staying that way for any length of time. And if we don't understand it, we'll look for something in the world to make us feel better. So we turn to entertainment, money, food, sex, drugs, alcohol, trying to find well-being on the outside. And the other thing then is to discover the well-being is already perfect inside of you, but for your holding. Sid said this once, but for holding thought, you're already enlightened. We get a little glimpse of that, taste of that when we're fully present, relaxed, in the moment, open-minded, open-hearted, filling up with good feeling and letting it extend to others. It's the heart of every spiritual teaching I've ever studied. Empty, fill, give it away. Let go, surrender, fill up with good feeling, pure love, happiness, joy. Give it away for free. It becomes a way of life. Only have one purpose. Empty, fill, give it away. That's it. You live that kind of life, you're going to live a beautiful life. And your wisdom will guide you toward how to let your unique, specific, beautiful being shine in the world in a way that's helpful to the world in your own way. I want to open it up. I don't know anything in my life other than coming back to this simplicity. When I'm having trouble, oh yeah, holding. If I see it, it's not a technique, I let it go. More and more, I'm just not interested in holding any thought. And what's left, presence, aliveness, feelings that uplift. And then without thinking about making decisions and doing things, I act from that place. In Hinduism, they call it doing without doing. Buddhism, right action. Christianity, loving service. Guided by what? This divine intelligence. Sid says, when we drop into a quiet, nice feeling, it's filled with divine intelligence. So you don't have to worry, it'll guide you perfectly.
So we have about 10 minutes left. So if you would like to talk to Dicken, you can raise your hand. And if you don't know where that is, if you go down to the react button, you'll see the little raise your hand bar. Hey, we have Anna.
Oh, good. Anna, hi.
Hi. I wanted to wait a little bit because I'm the one to jump to the opportunity.
I know.
Um,
I know.
so beautiful, everything you've shared with us today, Dicken. So beautiful. So many, so much clarity and good feeling. And the one thing, there's two things that came. One of them was, you said it so beautiful. Enlightenment is the realization of our true nature. Enlightenment is the experiential realization of our true nature.
Mhm.
It's like the light going on.
Yeah.
You can think about a light, turning a light on. How do I turn the light on? And read books about turning the light on. But when the light turns on, it's impossible to not feel it. And that's what I think you highlighted, that when we are relaxed, we can feel it. And
Yeah.
for me, it's been a journey of understanding that being relaxed is safe, that being open is safe, that nothing is going to come to eat me if I allow myself to be relaxed and happy and in the moment. So I really appreciate. There is so much more, but now, you know, even this spiritual conversation can get a little bit like there is snow flying in my snow globe. Even though it's a beautiful understanding, I just get too excited sometimes. And the other thing that came is like one thought away, and and you said it actually after. The thought is, I don't have to think about that.
It's one of the most radical parts of Sid's teaching is that we're one thought away from what we're looking for. And it's the release of thought into the now, where there's an openness and this natural light within shines through. In other words, life energy is meant to expand. And when we stop holding, it expands because it's its nature to expand. So that's why some people say God is love. If you light a match, that light expands and it'll keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going. You can be on another planet. And if you had the right instrumentation, you could see the light. We can be light to the world.
Mm.
Any of us. Light has been used as a metaphor for pure consciousness for centuries. Our true nature, the light within, go to the light, lighten up, become enlightened, are all pointing toward our true nature, beings of light, before it runs through our intellect, which can distort the light, contaminate the light. So
I
we
think,
go,
sorry.
yeah, yeah.
The thing that get us is that there is a period of restlessness, because if I'm holding negative thought and I wake up and say to myself, I don't have to think about this. There's nothing for me to think about. I'm not going to be in complete relaxation straight away, but at least I'm pointing in the right direction. So what happens with the low moods? And maybe you can tell me if I'm in there. Is I am in a low mood. I wake up to the fact that I'm thinking lots and about something that feels really bad. Immediately, I feel some sort of peace, but there is lingering feelings.
Yeah, yeah. It's a
It's painful.
misunderstanding to think that if we wake up in a low mood, we won't still have feelings. But if you're not thinking about yourself and what you're feeling and what it means and what you should and shouldn't feel and what you should and or wanting to feel something different than what you're feeling, that's what's called accepting what is as it is. So living with understanding means you still have low moods, but you go through them differently. You're accepting of those feelings so you don't fight them, you don't judge them, you don't think there's something wrong with feeling horrible or fearful or upset. But if you're not buying into your thinking then, or not creating more story in your head, even in a low mood, you can be incredibly creative and kind because your mind is open. You're not holding. And then it passes when it passes. It's natural, but it passes faster when we're not feeding it than when we are. But we still have low moods. So, as my friend Linda Pransky says, you learn how to do down well. She said, I want a
Right.
bumper sticker. I don't want to have a bumper sticker. I want to be happy all the time. She says, I want a bumper sticker that says doing down well. It's a characteristic of well-being, is not the absence of low moods, but our relationship to them changes. Just a natural flow. Natural flow. Low mood thinking flowing through us allows us presence, which allows us creativity, new thinking. So you don't have to wait forever until you're in a good mood. You can shift into an open mind and still be kind when you're in a low mood. Still be a good parent, still make good decisions. It's a different feeling. It's George Pransky used to tell me, Dicken, you have to learn how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I didn't like that. That wasn't what I signed up for. I don't want to be comfortable feeling uncomfortable. I don't want to feel uncomfortable. That's me saying I only want to inhale. I don't want to exhale. The exhale is waste. Why even bother? I didn't realize then it was a natural cycle. Naomi, hi.
Hi, thank you for taking my comments. So this is kind of new to me still, even after a couple of years. And what I get confused about is sort of automatic pilot, where there is no thinking. There is no, I don't know, I call it a nanosecond. There is no opportunity to say to myself, stop and let's look, or there's just automatic pilot of doing something without thinking about it.
Well, there's always mental activity going on. So there's always some form of thought being created. Verbal thinking is such a small fraction of the thinking human beings do. But I'm interested in what creates that, and what creates that is formless. So it's only in quiet can we discover the formless nature of life, the creative nature of life. So when I'm confused, I know I'm in my intellect trying to figure it out. There's no cure found in the intellect. You won't find the answer in the intellect. So if you let go of all of that, your confusion, you're trying to figure it out, trying to distinguish between conscious and unconscious thinking, and you'll discover what's still here when you let go of everything. And that's beautiful. That's helpful.
So this is like retroactive thinking then? So it's after the after the awareness of thinking, or the awareness of not thinking, and then you quiet and say, okay, let's be quiet about this. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I want to be like a little kid again. Little kids don't ask any of these questions.
Right.
They just get present. So Sid would often say to us, because he'd see us struggling to try and understand this intellectually, and he'd say, well, just go and enjoy yourself. Go on picnics, go be with friends. And if at any moment you don't feel happy, or you're not enjoying yourself, if you realize it has something to do with the thoughts you're entertaining, it'll bring you right back to the now, right back to happiness, and you're good to go again. And then the intellect go, yeah, but is it this kind of thinking or that kind? There's a gazillion kinds of thinking.
Yeah, so yeah, but
Yeah. And it just feeds confusion.
Mhm.
Is that helpful?
I don't know. We'll see.
Good. Good. I want you to be experimenters. Just find out for yourself. If you let go of all thinking and you don't try and use everybody else's label, what's that space like inside of yourself when you're not holding on to thought? Can you sense the feeling in that space? Don't take anybody's word for it. Sid would say, please don't take my word for anything I tell you. You have to find out. You find out what's there in quiet. What's quiet? Well, he says, I'll tell you what quiet is when you're not holding any thought. That's what quiet is. If you step into that space where you're no longer entertaining thought, what's still there? What is that? Find out. That's what people all over the world they spend their life exploring that because it's so intriguing. It feels new and fresh each time you step beyond your conceptual mind. It doesn't feel like the same old space. It's endlessly entertaining. I don't see little kids complaining about being present and feeling lighthearted and playful. They don't get tired of it. You can get tired pretty quickly thinking about the principles. One time we're on a picnic with Sid and he's at the grill and getting food ready, and we're having these deep, serious, heavy conversations about the principles. He turns around, enough of this talk about the principles. It's a beautiful evening. Let's enjoy the evening. And we all had a really good laugh because we could just see what we were doing. And we just came back just ordinary. We just woke up to the present moment and started being funny and kind. So, well, thanks to the people who are putting out some messages on chat too. And thank you. And I love you too. Love you too.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much, Dicken. And before we go, I just want to tell you about the next webinar. It'll be in 2 weeks, September 24th. As usual, 2 p.m. Eastern, and we will have Marina Galan, and the subject will be if you love, you will understand. So this is a great duo for the month of September. And before we sign off, please feel free to unmute yourself. Say goodbye and thank you to Dicken. Thanks, Dicken.
Goodbye. Thank you. Thanks, Dicken.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Dicken.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks.